Bueno, estamos de vuelta en nuestra conversación con Robin Alexander. Robin, you said that teachers are the key, but that would be very expensive. Are other solutions for try to solve that problem?
Yes, a good teaching force might seem to be expensive, but one of the things which we are trying to encourage in Britain is sharing resources. So, for example, there is a problem in primary schools. We have a system of generalist teachers, which we inherited from the Victorians in the 19th century. One teacher teaches everything. That was when the curriculum was narrow. It's like that. This means that teachers have areas of weakness as well as strength. What can you do about that? One solution is an expensive one, that you have lots more specialist teachers. The other is that teachers exchange classes. A teacher with a strength in science exchanges with a teacher with a strength in mathematics. They exchange resources between schools as well as within schools. Primary work together with secondary to exchange resources. You build networks. So the current stage of the Cambridge Primary Review, we've produced our evidence, we've produced our report, our recommendations. Now we have been building a large national network with regional centres where teachers can work with us on building on the ideas in our report, and this is all about sharing ideas, sharing resources. Now, there's a problem, because in England at this time, the focus on tests works against that, because it is all about competition.
Yes.
So we are trying to encourage collaboration between teachers and schools in the interests of children, and the policy is trying to encourage competition also in the interests of children. Who is right? We think we are.
Well, actually, the situation is very similar to Chile. Also, we have generalistic teachers in the primary school, and it works quite well in the early years, but when the kids get older, the problem is with the topic. So they teach math, they know pedagogy and methodology and all this stuff, but they do not know math. So it's quite difficult. I wonder if the technologies of information can help in the process of learning, because there are several countries which one are very keen in goes into those new technologies. Can it change the ways of learning?
Yes, you can. I mean, all the countries, the top performing countries in PISA, are also countries which make good use of IT, information technology, and have computers in their classrooms and so on. But that is pretty well standard certainly in the world's richer countries. I think there's a lot of concern about whether the technology is being used appropriately. And also, very often, a great deal of time is spent on teaching children how to use the technology when they already know, because many of them have computers at home and they have their iPhones and iPads and all the rest of it. So I think we probably need to become much more sophisticated in the methodology of using IT to support learning and to support teaching. But certainly, for the purposes of supporting teachers, you have a network, we have a network, and it's partly a physical network. We do meet together, but most of it is a virtual network. So we are using the technology, we're exchanging ideas, we're exchanging resources, putting resources on the web, entering conversations and so on. So the possibilities for, not just for children's learning, but also for professional learning now are greater, I think, than they ever have been because of the new technology.
Well, actually, you said in the report that classes now should be more participative,
yes.
And if the kids are part of the class of
Yeah.
their own learning,
Yeah.
they will learn better.
Yes.
So those technologies also could be part of that, because information is in the web.
Yeah.
So now the classes and the teachers should maybe put the seed on the kids in order that they get in love with knowledge.
Yes.
I don't know.
That's right. But here's a note of caution. It's very important that we don't educate a generation of children who spend all their lives with their glued to a screen, because we know that in the early years and the primary years, actually throughout life, that the most important tool of human learning is talk. is conversation, is human communication. We learn through language, we learn through talking, and it's through talking that the brain develops, it's through talking that understanding develops. There's research being done in the United States on what distinguishes the very best teachers from the rest, and three things. One is the depth of their knowledge of what they're teaching, subject knowledge, what some people call pedagogical content knowledge. So they must have a real depth of understanding of their subjects and enthusiasm for it, which is infectious. The second thing is the capacity to provide constant assessment, not just tests, but assessment all the time. All the time they're looking at children, listening to children, looking at their work, making judgments so that they can diagnose children's understandings, they can decide how to build on their new knowledge. And the third thing is the quality of interaction between teacher and student, among the students themselves. And in many countries, the international default is what we call IRE, Initiation Response Evaluation. Teacher asks a question, a closed question, child gives an answer, teacher says, good, and moves on to the next one. So there is actually no discussion. And what we need to do is have a much more open kind of talk in the classrooms, whereby when the child gives an answer, the teacher then follows up with another question, which probes the answer, because only when you look at the child's answer can you gauge how much the child has understood and whether you need to do further work to support the child's understanding, to correct misunderstandings. If you just go with the traditional, historical, formal structure of interaction, then you are losing one of the most powerful tools of human learning.
Well, actually, you mentioned that we still continue, well, in the case of England, but also I will extrapolate that to all around the world, particularly in Chile, that we remain very Victorian in the way we teach, because Victorians were worried about the 3 R's, reading, writing and arithmetic. And they do not take care about the oral world.
Right.
And now we saw at school here in Chile that they started preschool and they play a lot in preschool, but they start first year primary school and they have to learn to read. And if they don't, they cannot pass. So reading is the most important. What is that?
Yes. Well,
have an ideological thing?
Yes, I'm interested in the notion of Queen Victoria as Queen of Chile. She wasn't. Yes, certainly in our country, we have inherited the notion that children must read and write and count, but talking is somehow subversive, it's dangerous. Because once children talk, they start challenging things, they start asking questions. But talk is profoundly important, particularly in the early years. And also, again, the evidence shows, as I said to you earlier about the relationship between the arts and the humanities, and literacy and numeracy, so we know the evidence shows that children learn to read more quickly if the methods they use have a high content of talk.
Of course.
Talk is an important. Oracy and literacy go together, they're very necessary. And so often, methods of teaching reading just concentrate on the reading and the writing and then neglect the talk. So there are so many situations where we are working against what the evidence shows. And it's a tragedy, because it means that children are missing out, they're not learning as quickly as they could. And it also means that very often that the policy isn't as effective as it deserves to be.
Well, this could be one of the main things of the review. So here in this review, that is quite big actually, there is the evidence.
Yes.
And then you compare the evidence with the policies.
Yes.
And that's the drama.
Mm-hmm. It is a drama, yes. But as I said, many of the policies pursued by the British government have been excellent.
Yeah,
it's just in the core areas of what goes on in classrooms that we think those policies have been misdirected.
So curriculum,
pedagogy,
testing.
Curriculum, assessment, pedagogy. And also we think that the teacher training system needs reform in Britain, and the inspection system needs reform. That's quite a lot of reforms that are needed.
And in what size they should be reformed?
Well, at the moment, if you take teacher training, I've raised some questions about teacher training. You know, is the entry level set high enough? We think it should be set higher. Questions about the content of teacher training. Is enough done to develop students' skills in the subjects that they're going to teach? Is enough done on pedagogy? At the moment, maybe not enough. I mean, the quality varies from one institution, one training institution to another. As far as the inspection goes, so the big questions about teacher training. As far as inspection goes, we have a fairly heavy-handed system of inspection, which creates a lot of fear in schools, and schools can be penalised if they do badly in inspection. Now, again, should the function of inspection be punitive? Should it be to punish schools, or should it be to support schools? We think the function of inspection should be support schools to help make them better, because we all want, that's where we are policy makers, everyone agrees. We want standards to be as high as possible and to be as consistent as possible across all schools, all areas of the curriculum. So the debate is about method. The debate is always about the method. What is the best way of raising standards?
What do you think of people who are specialists in an area teaching at schools, if they are not teachers? Can they take some pedagogical courses in order to be able to teach in primary school, for instance?
Sorry, you'll have to repeat the
People
question.
who are, I don't know, an historian who want to teach history to primary school, can they take just pedagogical courses in order to be able to do that?
Yes, why not? I mean, we need in our schools worldwide the best people to become teachers. I don't think anyone will disagree with that. And many countries say they find it difficult to recruit teachers, even though they set the entry bar low. So if you don't have a high standard of teachers, you will not have a high standard of learning. And if, for example, there are talented historians who are interested in teaching, why not give them a short course and see how they get on? If they have a real enthusiasm for history, that enthusiasm will transmit itself to the children. In many of our schools in England, we have artists, musicians, scientists, engineers who come into schools and talk about their work with children. And in other words, they become, for the day, teachers. And it's hugely effective. All our major orchestras have outreach work. They go out into the schools and children play their instruments with professional musicians. Professional artists come in, poets, dramatists. This kind of exchange between the wider community and schools is very important, I think. And again, do we make enough, do we take sufficient advantage of the talent, not just in our schools, but outside our schools?
What happened with the Union of Teachers? Are they complain about that, or they accept it?
No, they accept it. What's the unions, and we have 7 unions in England, teaching unions. What they object to is wholly untrained teachers. You know, the notion that anyone can teach, and there are some people who believe that. I have spoken to policymakers who said teaching in primary school is easy. I could do it. If it's done well, it is not easy.
I agree that.
But it is not always done well.
So the problem is quite broad, and there are several things to learn to other countries, and I think we are trying to move to a reform. Actually, the government says that they want to do a revolution in education, and I assume that we have lots of things to learn of your experience and of this particular report, that we should work better in order to see what things are useful for our country and in order to move forward.
Yes.
So thank you very much.
Can I just say one more thing?
Yes, please.
Revolutions are always risky and potentially dangerous, of course. And revolutions in education sometimes throw the system up in the air and it falls down and in ruins. I think probably the way forward is gradual, incremental reform, in which you evaluate the previous reform and you build on it. You don't just dismiss it. Um, and the other thing to say is I think, although I'm very careful when I visit other countries to say that it is for you in Chile or in the Netherlands, Australia or the United States or wherever it is to decide whether what I say and what our report says is relevant. I do think the evidence is gradually building that what we said in that review is universal. 147 countries have now accessed our website. There's huge international interest, and I think there is a sense that we've offered an alternative agenda for the reform of education, and it certainly is being interpreted that way in many countries now.
So thank you very much. Muchas gracias, senador. Le paso ahora la palabra. Le agradezco esta conversación con el profesor Alexander y ojalá que para nuestro país sea útil recoger sus experiencias y poder evaluar en detalle este informe y ver qué nos sirve como país. Todos queremos una mejor educación.
Ha sido una muy interesante conversación entre Magdalena Mervilá y Robin Alexander, un cientista de la educación, un académico, un profesor, un investigador y un hombre que construye redes para analizar, discutir, auscultar la evolución que tiene la educación no solo en Gran Bretaña, sino en diversos lugares del mundo. Precisamente se encuentra en Chile, invitado por la Universidad Gabriela Mistral para discutir, analizar la problemática de la educación en Chile. Alicia Romo, su rectora, nos ha compartido esta ilustre y destacada visita para que la Comisión de Educación del Senado tenga acceso a sus criterios. La interacción del alumno con su profesor, la generación de confianza, las relaciones horizontales, la creatividad, el interés como herramienta fundamental, el entender que el profesor no es una autoridad que impone disciplina y que impone además el respeto, sino que también genera confianza, el entender que el estudio entre estudiantes es una herramienta muy poderosa, que las tecnologías de información y comunicación hoy día son prácticamente un activo que ya está incorporado en el estudiante y que el profesor debe hacer esfuerzos para poder ponerse al día en esta materia. Que las pruebas de evaluación tienen algo de bueno y tienen mucho de malo. Son positivas porque permiten ciertas comparaciones, son malas porque son muy limitadas y muy parciales. El estudiante es mucho más que el resultado de una prueba. Hay elementos que son cualitativos y que tienen que ver con su capacidad personal. En fin, elementos muy significativos para mejorar la calidad de la educación, para hacer que el sistema educativo eleve realmente sus condiciones. Ese ha sido el propósito de esta conversación, donde en mi espacio, Nuevas Miradas, que es el espacio de la reflexión, hoy le hemos abierto una ventana a una académica de la Universidad Gabriela Mistral, a Magdalena Mervilá y también a Robin Alexander, un académico de prestigio mundial en la investigación de los temas de educación. Un tema que nos apasiona, un tema que nos conmueve, un tema que consideramos fundamental para que Chile pueda dar el salto cualitativo hacia el desarrollo y para que nuestro pueblo pueda mejorar su calidad de vida y tener mayor permeabilidad social. Nos encontramos en un próximo programa, Nuevas Miradas,